Okay, I'm Lori, and welcome to my companion planting workshop. I'm the garden coordinator for the Port Moody Police Community Garden, and I've worked on many different garden projects over the years. I'll answer your question as we go along, and I think Michelle is going to keep track of that.
Yep.
And I'll give you some companion planting tips that you might incorporate into the planting of your vegetable garden. And I hope that you will learn something from my presentation. So what is companion planting? Generally speaking, companion planting is a gardening strategy that maximizes growth and crops by planting mutually beneficial plants next to each other. All plants and flowers contain natural chemicals in their leaves and root systems, and when you group good companions together, these natural chemicals work together to attract beneficial insects as well as ward off harmful pests and diseases. And this improves the overall health, crop yield, flavor of your plants. In other instances, poor companions work together negatively, detracting from your plant's health. Companion planting is based more on experience and anecdotal evidence because every garden environment is different. So therefore, don't be afraid to experiment what works for you. One of the central ideas in companion planting is that monocultures are a bad thing. I think we all know monoculture is a plantation of just one crop, as you would see in those large industrial agriculture farm fields. And the problem with monocultures is that they are inherently unnatural. They take more resources, water, energy to maintain, and can damage the soil ecosystem. And since they are more prone to problems with pests and diseases, they are harder to manage organically, if not impossible. So what are some of the benefits of companion planting? So it helps repel pests or lure them away from your prized plants. It attracts pollinators to the garden. It provides habitats and food for beneficial insects that control pests. Improves conditions like your soil and your light conditions. It can help prevent diseases in your crops and assist in planning the garden layout for maximum benefit to all your crops you grow. So one of the most well-known companion plants are the three sisters, which are corn, beans, and squash. And when planted together, the three sisters work together to help one another thrive and survive. For centuries, these three crops have been the center of Native American agriculture and culinary traditions, and it is for good reason, as these three crops complement each other in the garden as well as nutritionally. So corn provides tall stalks for the beans to climb so that they are not out-competed by the sprawling squash vines. Then the beans, they provide nitrogen to fertilize the soil while also stabilizing the tall corn. And then your squash. Then large leaves of squash plants shade the ground, which help retain soil moisture and prevent weeds. So that's the three sisters. So companion plants, I mean, there's literally thousands of combinations of companion plantings. So I'll just give a few examples. And at the end, I have some charts I can show you and give you the links for them. So here's a few examples. Carrots and leeks. So leeks repel carrot flies and carrots repel leek moths and onion flies. So you plant those guys together.
Interesting.
Then there's lettuce and beans. So pole beans provide lettuce with some much needed shade. So if you plant them like on the south and then lettuce next, and all the beans add nitrogen to the soil, and lettuce are big nitrogen feeders, so they love that. Cabbage and rosemary. Rosemary deters the cabbage moth. And basil, which is, one of the more popular ones, and it's a great companion for many plants. Except don't plant it near brassicas like broccoli, cauliflowers, cabbages, and like cucumber for some reason. I don't know that reason, but yeah, don't plant it near cucumber.
Maybe a chemical reaction of some kind?
Yeah, it must be. Yeah. Yeah. So basil will repel mosquitoes, so that's also nice to have on your deck. White flies and flies and other garden pests. Some gardeners believe basil improves the flavor when you plant it next to tomatoes. I do every year. I'm not sure if it's true or not. My tomatoes taste really good though. So, but you can experiment.
Makes a good tomato sauce. Why it would make sense.
Right? Yeah, and then you can just harvest them together and they go well together. So. So roses and garlic, this is an example of a companion plant for ornamental plants. I mean, you can eat some roses, but yeah. If you can see here, the shorter garlic fills in nicely around the bare stems of the rose bushes. And more importantly, to the success of this companion plant is that garlic is said to chase away aphids, spider mites, and the Japanese beetles, which can really destroy roses. And you can also plant tomatoes near roses because they can help prevent the black spots.
Oh, tomatoes near roses, okay.
Yeah.
I'm trying to improve my tomato crop this year, so.
Yeah. So lots of fertilizer. So what not to plant? I mean, again, there's like so many combinations of what don't work well together, but I'll give you a few examples. So peas and beans do not grow well with garlic and onions. Garlic will stunt the growth of peas and beans. Don't plant cabbage near strawberries. Strawberries will stunt the growth of cabbage, and then they both attract the same kind of pests, so they'll end up destroying each other. Carrots and dill should not be grown together. They're from the same family, so they can cross-pollinate, and then you end up with this bitter tasting carrots. Yeah, and with anything in that family, like fennel would be another one, but we'll talk about fennel later. Here it is, fennel. So fennel is one of those plants that just doesn't work well with pretty much any plant.
Doesn't play well with others, okay.
No. I mean, it smells great and you kind of want to put it in your garden, but it just doesn't make a good companion plant. It secretes this allelopathic substance from its roots, and it inhibits the growth of its neighbors. But fennel does attract a variety of beneficial insects like ladybugs, the parasite wasp, and aphids are said to find fennel offensive and are strongly repelled by it. So what I do is I plant it in a pot away from my other plants and don't let it share the soil.
Well, Florence has a question here. Can you grow fennel near a flower? Like, or can it just sit by itself? It can't interact with flowers or any kind of vegetables?
I'm not sure about other flowers. It might have the same effect with its roots. I would just keep it away in its own spot.
Okay, if you guys really want fennel, keep it in its own box or something.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just to be safe. Yeah. And then you want to keep some plants that are prone to similar diseases apart. And a good example would be avoid planting tomatoes and potatoes together because they're affected by the same blight, and that can spread really quickly.
Oh, tomatoes and blight. Okay. Well, Lauren actually has a question about tomatoes too. You mentioned how do tomatoes prevent or how do you know tomatoes prevent black spots on other plants?
That's not from personal experience, but I've read that, and it's when you grind up the leaves and soak it, and then the chemicals from the leaves apparently help with the black spot, and you spray it on your roses.
Okay.
That's so cool. Yeah, that's a good
Yeah. Yeah, it's
like
it gets my biochemistry brains working here.
Yeah. When you think about that smell, the strong smell off of the tomato plants, would have a reaction with the roses. Okay, should I keep going?
Sure. Sorry, there's just random questions that pop up.
Yeah, no, that's good. Okay. So climate cooperation. This refers to when companion plants help each other in terms of climate requirements. So the plants that love the sun, they will be taller and as they reach for the sun, and they'll block out the sun from crops planted below them. So an example would be like this example in the picture here. You have the squash on a trellis creating shade for the lettuce, which doesn't like a lot of sun, and you can help prevent it from bolting. So you just plant the lettuce underneath. I mean, you could do that without the trellis too, just you know, a sun-loving plant there and to create shade from the south side, and then plant your greens beside them. So planting to improve the soil for future crops. So a good example is nitrogen fixers like beans and peas, because nitrogen is essential to your garden, but can be difficult to add without chemical assistance, which we don't want to do as organic gardeners. So this is when nitrogen fixing plants are useful. These plants are able to draw nitrogen gas from the air and store it in their roots. So with the beans and the peas, they leave the nitrogen in the soil after they die and they decompose or are composted. So I usually just cut them off and just let the roots die in the soil and then mulch it in. And so then after that, I would plant nitrogen loving plants like leafy greens and I guess garlics and leeks, they really like their nitrogen as well. Another way of companion planting. So you plant fast growers with slow growers to maximize their space. Especially, you're seeing a lot of the people here have community gardens. So we're all about maximizing space. So plants with deeper root systems will likely be happier growing beside one with shallow roots because there will be less competition for food. So example here, the radishes and lettuces mature quickly and they'll be ready to harvest when crops like squash or melons or carrots are just starting to grow large enough to take over that space. Then succession planting, I think of as related to complementary practice to companion planting. So it's a method of staggering the propagation of crops to produce a continual supply and extend your harvest season. So planting for a continual harvest can take a bit of planning, and there are 4 basic approaches. You can also combine those. So the first one is same crop staggered plantings. So this method simply involves recurrent plantings of the same species over the course of the season. So for example, planting a short season crops like lettuce and spinach, and they can be planted every few weeks until late summer or early fall for a continual harvest. So like I would plant them maybe every couple of weeks if you want a steady supply. So different plants in the same space. This method involves utilizing the same garden space to grow more than one crop in succession. So by composting plants as soon as they have passed their prime and then replanting with something different. So no space in the garden is left unutilized. For example, try planting early spring greens in a bed that will later be used for beans. And once your summer harvest dries up, try replanting the space with kale or like collards. Another one is intercropping. And it's similar to companion planting. This involves integrating early producing varieties with longer maturing ones and combining plants that have different spatial needs. Like we were talking about, like with radishes and carrots are a great combination because they both have the similar growing requirements. And the quick emerging radishes will mature first, and being ready for harvest by the time the slower to develop carrots require more room to grow. And then you have same plants and multiple varieties. So if you choose wisely, you can grow early, mid, and late season varieties of the same crop, which in addition to allowing a longer and more abundant harvest, an example would be like getting early, mid, and late seasons of potatoes. And then you just keep, like you plant them, one will be ready, and then summer, then another variety will be ready, and then by fall, then another variety of the potatoes will be ready. So yeah, that's the 4 succession planting. So trap cropping. This is the intentional growing of plants that attract pests on the theory that they will lure them away from your crops. This is a good theory and works if you harvest the trap crop while it is infested and then destroy it. I'm sure many of us have aphids in our garden and know they can do a lot of damage. And one way of controlling them is using trap cropping. So an example would be planting nasturtiums, because aphids love them, and planted as the trap crop. And so in theory, it redirects the aphids to the nasturtiums and away from the other plants in your garden. And then once you see it's covered in aphids, you remove it and destroy it. Okay, so biochemical pest suppression. The marigold.
Laurie, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
I have a shade garden, so nasturtiums, like, is there another shade variety of the same kind of aphid attraction plant?
I'm not sure one that, I mean, aphids seem to like almost every plant, but
yeah.
I feel like nasturtiums is one in particular that I know of that works well.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how well that would grow in the shade.
It's just a random thought. Because I have a shade garden, not too much can grow in shade gardens, so
yeah,
other than lettuce and, you know,
your collards and
yeah, something like that. But yeah, I'm like, that's a good tip if I can find a shade loving aphid attractor.
Yeah, let me know.
I'll keep you posted.
Okay. Okay, so biochemical pest suppression. And so the marigold is the most well-known plant for repelling insects because they release a toxin called thiopene, which repels nematodes in the soil. And they also produce a pheromone that confuses male insects to the point that they won't mate. And marigolds, they also attract lots of beneficial insects like ladybugs, hoverflies, parasitic wasps that also prey on other garden pests. But marigolds they're not all good news. They also attract spider mites and slugs. So, but I think it's worth it to have them in your garden. So the pest control, we talked a bit about that. So an example would be planting onions, especially one would be near your carrots. They, as it says, they deter the carrot rust fly. So if you plant them beside or in between the rows, like they are here. Cosmos can also do that for carrots. But I guess you have to think like that pest insects are also part of the ecosystem. So it's better to accept that there will be some pest damage in your garden, but maybe set a threshold and what's tolerable for you and work from that. Because I mean, you can't totally eliminate all the pests in your garden. They're meant to be there as well. So attracting the good bugs. So of course we know not all bugs are bad and some are really good, like ladybugs. Ladybugs eat a lot of the annoying bugs like aphids. You can actually use certain plants to attract these bugs to your other plants you're trying to protect. Using the ladybug example, you can try dill. However, dill does attract tomato hornworms, so be strategic about where you plant it. Maybe just grow the dill away from your tomatoes, for example. What else? We have the parasitic wasp. So planting cosmos, cilantro, and dill. The ground beetle larvae. They feed on pests like ants, aphids, caterpillars, and you can plant perennials for them to overwinter. And the lacewings. Both the adults and the larvae feed on aphids, scale thrips, mealybugs, and caterpillars. So plant cosmos, yarrow, and dill. Cosmos seems like a good option.
And dill, apparently.
No, yeah, it'd be strategic with that. So attracting pollinators and other beneficial insects. So many plants attract pollinators and other beneficial insects to the garden, helping to improve harvest and naturally quelling pest populations. So I'm just going to give a few examples because there are many. Forage, which is one of my personal favorites. It's a great companion plant and it attracts bees and can aid in the pollination of squash, melons, and cucumbers.
Is
And it
this
actually kind of
borscht right here? Is this borscht right here with the bee?
That is a chive flower.
Oh, okay.
Forage is like a purple star. Sometimes they're pink.
Okay.
But yeah, it's great for your soil as well. Calendula, it attracts pollinators all through the season. And it makes a really good cream. Chamomile attracts hoverflies and parasitic wasps that prey on garden pests. Cosmos, as we were saying, provides food and habitat for many beneficial insects, including bees, parasitic wasps, ladybugs, and lacewings. And Dr. Bonnie Henry has a package out this year with West Coast seeds, all Cosmos.
Yep.
Parsley attracts ladybugs and spiders that dine on garden pests. And yarrow, another favorite, is a bee magnet. So I'll just touch lightly on planting guilds, as it's a very large topic. So a guild is a harmonious assembly of plants, with the essential characteristic being a diverse mixture whose elements all have a purpose. The plants are chosen to be beneficial to each other, and so it is similar to companion planting. We often talk about guilds in building a food forest, especially in permaculture. But there is also a lot to be said for creating cultivation compilations in small-scale home gardens. Guilds are more or less just a step beyond well-established companion planting, moving from useful pairings onto functionality, ideally self-sustaining systems. The example here is of a 7-level forest garden. So all working together. In a forest, we see an anchor species like the tree, and plants that serve as a central focus for natural occurring guilds. Surrounding these anchor trees, a variety of plants and fungi arise, providing and receiving support from the anchor tree in many ways, deterring pests, attracting pollinators, providing shade. Naturally occurring forest guilds tend to have up to 7 layers of diverse plants around it at any one time. Inside the guild itself, there are various functions happening at once to help support the central plant, while it also supports the species around it. Some plants mine for minerals, some provide protection to others, like from sun, wind, heavy rainfall. Some add nitrogen, some give physical support like a trellis, and so on. So by serving many functions at once, the elements within the guild create resilience, helping to protect and boost your main crop, while each sustaining the other's needs. So like a tree in a forest, for a smaller scale, we could use the example of a tomato as our anchor plant. So you could incorporate forage with your tomatoes to attract pollinators and deter tomato hornworms. And then maybe you plant a few onions to stave off pests with their heavy scent, and they also loosen the soil. And then you may plant some basil to prevent aphids and improve the growth of the tomato. And then maybe some marigolds. They can throw into the mix as they kill nematodes with a toxin they shed from the roots. So yes, just using this in our home gardens, because guilds are an inspiring and intelligent planting pattern that increase the yields of your crops while protecting and supporting them using other plants and elements. So by leveraging the natural benefits of certain plants, you can create a self-balancing ecosystem that's abundant and resilient. So choose your companions wisely, observe your environment, and harness forest gardening techniques to manage pest control, wind, sun conditions, weeds, water flow, and so on. So the more diversity, the better. So there's a lot of companion planting charts out there, but a lot of them are really extensive, and they won't show up that well on this presentation. But this is just a small one.
Oh,
And I have links for these at the end.
yeah. I was gonna say this picture is really helpful.
Yeah, and but I mean, because there are so many combinations, it's sometimes nice just to have a small one to start.
Yeah.
This one's one of my favorite ones because it's a bit more, you can't really see it that well. It's more extensive, but not too big either.
You could put it on your fridge or something.
Yeah. See in there, that's huge. But if you want to know a lot about companion planting, this is a great chart.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Oh, no, this one. Oh,
So what works for your garden? Like I said, there's thousands of beneficial plant companionships that we're just beginning to understand. We've touched on just a few of these today. My best advice is to observe what works in your garden and practice and see what brings improvements to your garden. So with care and attention, companion gardening will certainly reward you with a bountiful harvest and hopefully fewer pests and disease problems. But yeah, be sure to take notes of what you've planted and near which plant and what combinations have worked well. So within several growing seasons, you will have accumulated some valuable information to make your companion cropping even more successful in the seasons to come. So observe, practice, make notes, and success. And here's some of the links. West Coast Seeds has a good article on it. And then there's a couple charts here from what I had shown you previously. And the first one was from the Farmer's Almanac, the small chart. I don't see that here. Yeah.
so what's everyone plan on planting in their garden this year?
Well, I'm stopping by West Coast Seeds tomorrow on my way to visit my family. So I'm excited to watch this presentation because he's given me some good ideas about what to pick up from the store.
Yay.
Yeah, thank you.
That's such a fun store too.
Yeah,
Love it, love it.
it's a
Yeah.
little far for me, but I like to order stuff from West Coast online. So yeah.
Totally.
But like I said, having only a shade garden, that's kind of limiting. So I'm stuck planting, like, I guess, lettuce and then my tomatoes in pots and then chasing the sun. But I will definitely plant some dill and try and put it in some other pot so the bugs can attack that and hopefully leave my poor tomatoes alone this year.
Oh, and you know, beyond companion planting using dish soap, spraying my plants with that. I do that too.
It doesn't hurt the leaves or the growth of the plant.
You don't want to do it when it's sunny out, you know, it'll burn the leaves, but if on a rainy day, or not too rainy,
No.
in between.
So dish soap, obviously it's diluted dish soap.
Yeah.
And then you just spray it in as kind of a repellent for different insects.
Especially aphids, yeah.
I was worried more about blight because all my tomatoes seem to get blight in August, and I didn't want to wet the leaves this year. It was like my mission in life not to get the leaves wet this year. So I was worried about that. So I don't know, would the dilution of dish soap still work, you think, if we don't do it that often?
I guess it's a toss-up, but
well, I'm always into experimenting. I haven't tried the dish soap.
Hose them off, and then you know they'll dry. The leaves will dry, right?
Do you water at night?
No, I told my brother-in-law to stop watering at night. He loves to do it. That's his favorite thing to do. But I said it's better to do it kind of early morning to mid-morning, and then yeah. But he's like, no, but that's what I do after I finish work. I'm like, it's too late then.
Yeah.
What are you planning to plant this year, Terry?
Well, I'm going to stay away from fennel for sure.
yeah, none of the plants like fennel, apparently.
Poor guy.
I love to clip fennel fronds and put that in my salad.
Oh yeah, it's great, but apparently it doesn't play well with others.
Yes.
Just plant him away in his own little section.
That's it. Yes.
Yeah.
Are there any plants you recommend planting right now, like companion plant pairing? Is that a possibility yet, or is it too cold out?
Yeah, to start companion, I mean, I would just start everything, all my, whatever you can
Right
plant,
now?
like greens, and you can put in some peas, beans,
Mm,
and then just keep adding as they go along, right?
nice. Nice.
Yeah. And yeah, you can start your onions too.
Yeah, onions are a good one. That's a good idea. Yeah.
And I have my garlic in there already, so I could just, plant around my garlic.
Fresh onions are always so good too. I love planting onions.
Oh yeah,
I love leeks too. For
yeah. Even chives,
yeah,
same family.
yeah.
So.
Just have a whole kind of herb section, and again, that's in a pot, and I just basically roll it out to the sun and then bring it back. But yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, and the rosemary too. That's another good one for attracting pollinators, and good to plant near the brassicas. Yeah.
So, does anyone have any more questions? Or we just... No? Okay. We're just a very quiet bunch today.
Well, you just answered everything so nicely, and those photos are going to be great to refer to, because at first I was like, oh my gosh, this is a lot to remember, but you had those nice
yeah,
images.
the charts were great.
Yeah.
I mean,
So now I'm set.
yeah,
Yeah.
I was like furiously trying to write these down,
Yeah.
and I'm like, oh, there's a chart. Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
So I'm definitely gonna check out those links that you gave us.
Yeah. Bring your chart with you. To your
Oh, yeah.
club. And it's good to plan it out beforehand. Like I like to draw it out sometimes and just sort of
Yeah.
think what's going to work together and what's not going to work together. And yeah.
Journaling.
Journaling. Yeah.
Oh, I keep a garden journal every year, so I have a huge I have a huge book full of things that worked and didn't work, and yeah. So.
And I do a map too, and then then there's some things I want to rotate the next year, so then I know don't plant it in that same zone.
Oh, nice. I wish I had more space. Yeah. One day.
I don't know if there's ever enough space.
Yeah, no, for gardeners, no. But I'm really looking forward to the community gardens this year, and maybe I'll come and visit you, Lori, at the BC, the police community garden.
Yeah, it'd be awesome. Yeah.
Maybe say hi to my old neighbor that works there. So yeah. Well, if there's not any more questions, yeah, I'm just gonna thank Lori for spending some time with us, and thanks for tuning in, guys, and we'll see you in a couple weeks for our next workshop.
All right. Happy gardening.
Okay.
Thank you.
Guys.
That was really informative. Thank you so much, Lori.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
It's a workshop we've never had, so that's great.
Yeah, I'm always looking for interesting things to learn, and you really did a great workshop, Lori.
Oh, awesome.